Model Railway TV. My name is Kevin Guy. I'm here today with model railway expert Ron Galloway. Ron, how are you doing today?
Good, Kevin.
Great. How you doing? I'm great. So, what got you into model railroading, Ron?
All I know is I've been doing it my whole life. I can see from my parents' records that I was a train fan at age 3.
Holy smokes.
Probably doing my own model railroads by age 5 or 6. And pretty much into the top end by age 12 or 13. And
we have quite a layout here to show today, I'm sure. So railroad has kind of taken up your life. Do you follow any of the assets of model railroading in any other aspects of your life?
You mean a complete train fan, from Railroadania?
Yes.
Model train videos.
Beautiful.
Chasing trains.
Chasing trains.
Building model trains, books, and videos, and I would guess clothing and anything related to trains.
Great. And I know some of your background. Can you tell us a little bit about your background as far as what you've done work-wise and things like that when it comes to model railroading?
And actually, an interesting story, and it actually has to do with the floods. I think were about 2009, or excuse me, wrong date, 1999. The floods in Minnesota when the river flooded. We were driving, watching the floods, and we were down near the area of Mall of America, and my wife had to go to the restroom. So we pulled into the Mall of America to use the restroom, and I went to hang out at my favorite store, the Great Train Store. And they happened to have an opening for a manager, so I applied and accepted the position. So that's when I stepped out of regular retail and moved into trains as a business.
So you started selling trains.
So I was selling trains and everything I'd mentioned, memorabilia, videos, pins, buttons, clothing, etc. at the Mall of America, which was a very busy place.
And where did it go from there?
When I was recruited by United Model, a distributor out of Chicago, to be the sales rep for the 5-state area, Minnesota, Dakotas, this upper half of Iowa and Wisconsin. So for about 3 years, I averaged 350 to 500 miles a day in my car, selling model trains, but not only trains, all hobbies, which is interesting to you, from RC to model cars, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Can you tell me something about some of the history of the lines that are local to our Minnesota and Midwestern
well, funny trains? You should ask, because kind of one of my areas of special study happens to be southeastern Minnesota railroads. The original history from the clay lines coming out of Red Wing, built up through Bellicester, and eventually followed on down through Pine Island, Goodhue, Rochester. Then they grew into their big special trains. There was a Redbird and a Bluebird that drove from the Twin Cities to Rochester for the Mayo Clinics.
Passenger liners.
High-speed passenger trains, top of the line, all the bells and whistles, shiny the gold before every trip.
We're looking into that again these days, aren't we?
Yeah, and then the 3 different lines that came up from the Mississippi River. I think they call it Minnesota Central. It just said the names changed almost every 6 months. And they were trying to build a line up out of Red Wing to reach Mankato. And that's the line, still exists, through Cannon Falls.
So about 100 miles long?
Yep, and there were several. The Milwaukee Road came up through down Caledonia, Rushford area.
Sure.
The Minnesota Central came out of Winona, up through the Rolling Stone, Altura, which is one of the modules over here. And then the final line up out of Red Wing. All the Winona, St. Peter, and the names constantly changed. Every 6 months they changed their name as they incorporated. So,
and you started some layouts here a few years back, and I see you have this magazine in your hand. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, Ron?
Well, the magazine was the inspiration for what's sitting behind us. I've always been a modeler, and I was a N scaler, running N scale on a 10-foot by 20-foot train cell module layout, and you'll see later. We always ran the Z-scale briefcase at the train shows, and people were pretty excited about the Z-scale. They really, really loved it. At one of my local hobby shops, I ran across this copy of this Z-Track magazine, and on the cover, a gentleman has modeled what I call the other side of the river. He modeled the Wisconsin side of the river. I happen to live on the Minnesota side of the river, up in the valleys and the bluffs, with the Canadian Pacific side. So when I saw this magazine, my inspiration, I knew I had to build a Z-scale train set of the other side of the river, which is the module actually directly behind us. And it just grew from there. And the hobby of model railroading, people ask, how long did it take? Well, the answer is, a layout is never done. It is always growing. Absolutely. So when did we start this? We started this in about 2006. And I generally add 2 sections per year because it is a train show design. It's designed for train shows to take on show. And we've got to build 2 at a time because you can't add 1 section at a time.
Yeah.
So we've been building 2 sections every year. So it's grown from 8 by 8 to 12 by 8, and now we're at about 20 by 8.
And when did we start the other side of the river, the Minnesota side, I might add?
This was the first module I built.
Very nice.
And I would guess 2006 I probably built that module. And then I had to build the other pieces to make it connect, so it would go all the way around. And like I said, it's just grown. It's grown from the briefcase onto the layout that we're going to see today.
So some of that inspiration has really taken you into building other and inspire you to do other things. I noticed we've got some water and some things like that. And I think in some later episodes we're gonna learn how to do some of that stuff.
Right. Well, what happened, because we had inspiration to build the first section after an area, then I came to the decision that every section was going to be built after an area. So every section I build, some of my favorite spots, some of the famous spots around the country. We study the videos. If I can go there, I've been there. I take my own pictures, so I'm generally modeling something, as opposed to just winging it. We're trying to build something specific.
So we're also learning about history and engineering feats and things like that as well, because trains don't just necessarily run on flat ground and things. We have to do some hills as well.
Correct. And actually, one of my other hobbies is we actually trace old road beds. Where were the trains? Where were the trains in late 1800? Using aerial photographs.
All right.
Driving, observation, asking farmers to enter their land. And I'd mentioned the old Minnesota Central coming out of Winona. There was a place called the Bear Creek Trestle over by Altura and Rolling Stone. It's now about a 5-mile hike to get there. Nothing but the some of the girders and the piers and the bases are left. But so that's the kind of stuff I do.
Not a lot of the roadbed. So thanks, Ron Galloway, for being here today, and thanks a lot for logging on today.